I'm glad to present our team report, Project-Based Learning as an approach to enhance ecological component in professional education. Recycling is a market requirement but is poorly supported by education. The educational standards of Ukraine don't prescribe competencies regarding recycling as an ecological component of education. Our research aims to determine the necessary changes in educational programs to implement approaches that will contribute to forming professional competencies in the future and today contribute to improving the understanding of the environmental component in professional education. In the previous study, the behavior of students regarding upcycling and the influence of various factors on their behavior was studied. These factors are defined following the model of theory of interpersonal behavior and the theory of planned behavior. We obtained two important results. First, students don't understand the benefits of using upcycling at all. The second result is that there are optimists and pessimists about upcycling. You see this picture. On the left are those who use upcycling very rarely, for example, once a year, and on the right, often, for example, was every 1 or 2 months. Now, let's try to understand the nature of the appearance of these optimists and pessimists and the influence of individual factors. One gets the impression that such a distribution has natural causes. Some people are excited and some aren't interested at all. According to the research results, we compared the influence of various factors on forming such conditional groups, optimists and pessimists. You see this, skeptics and optimists. A table with a comparison according to the Mann-Whitney model is presented. In the table, those factors that are influential are circled in red. We can compare the relevant coefficients for each of them. There are 4 factors which have a significant influence on the formation of skeptic and optimist subgroups: attitude and intention, and subjective norm and perceived behavior control. At the same time, there is a certain discrepancy between self-reported attitude of students and the actual upcycling behavior. You can see 2 pictures with attitude on the left and the upcycling behavior of students on the right. In words, most respondents have a highly positive attitude to upcycling. In practice, only about half confirm their words with actions. It's a consequence of 2 things. They don't understand why it's necessary. Is the second time, it's affected by the onslaught of fashion. Ecology is fashionable. We used problem-based and project-based learning to form a graduate profile adapted to work in modern garment production and to strengthen the environmental component in engineering education. This slide demonstrates you the total scheme of our experiments. You see there are total numbers of students, bachelor's and master students of Notre Dame for different specialties. Among them, 22 students specialized in the design, 36 studied the technology of clothing, industry products, and 35 specialized in vocational education and training. VET. I will use this abbreviation in what follows. You can see the model as a way of 9 factors influencing upcycling behavior compared to the frequency of upcycling practice. And you see the group, experimental group, and a group of students without any training, the special training. Programs of 2 disciplines, you see the names of these disciplines, was used to practice the skills of working on individual elements of PBL and PGBL methods under the guidance of teacher. The second was used for the independent creation of PGBL student project. Environmental projects devoted to the organization of waste management in the textile industry occupied a significant part of the topic. So you see our experimental group and result. We can compare the relative numbers of observation as a function of the scores for the perceived benefits for groups of junior in green and senior in white students of the specialties technology and design without special training, and for groups of students of wet education. You see this specialty. In our conclusion, if you don't conduct experimental training, the indicators of junior and senior years almost don't change. It means that the exciting curriculum doesn't provide an environmental component. For experimental group, the conducted training significantly changes the situation. An advantage of upcycling optimist appeared, which was not present before the study. You see this changing as this curve. Mathematical calculation supports the conclusion about the changes. We see the equation that describes the curves. You see approximation peak for skeptics and for optimists. Please note the highlights in red. More than 0.9 means that the mathematical curve is very well described. See the excellent fitting for these curves. Before experiment, you can see bimodal curve, and after the experiment, unimodal curve. However, for juniors, the coefficient is very small at 0.5. We can't say for sure, maybe because the groups were small. However, for senior students, you can see this coefficient 0.8. The unimodal character is more obvious. There are 2 options for training, either the introduction of special disciplines or the introduction of modules into exciting disciplines. Both have the right to life. We checked one and can't say anything about the other yet. It's necessary to use established terms to understand the effectiveness of the study. I mean, learning outcomes and acquire competencies. At the same time, the necessary competencies aren't formulated in the modern approved standards of Ukraine. So, based on the study of European programs, we have determined those competencies and program learning outcomes that are important. You can see this competence definition of these competencies and most common descriptors for learning outcomes. You can find a description. You see only example. There are 7 such an important competencies for sustainable education. You can find a description of other competencies in the full text of our article, Perhaps it will be useful when updating educational programs and provide an opportunity to consider the European experience. Further research aims to formulate competencies and learning outcomes for further changes in educational programs. You can see the total conclusions of our research, and I thank you for your attention.